I'm worried that I am the slightest bit out of sync. So if those in the chat who are watching could let me know, that would be fantastic. But we will begin with just kind of bounce around the whole NFL schedule here. And again, this will be one of the last weeks where we go over every single game because I don't know if we need to go through all what was it 13 games that we had yesterday. Although it was a bit easier to manage than we didn't have the 10 and the whatever this week. We just had, we had a bit easier to handle 7. Okay, thanks, Toxic. Very little. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to change that on the fly. That's a little bit annoying because it seemed to work well last week, and I have not changed anything on my end. But anyway, so yes, apologies if we are a touch out of sync here this week. Okay, so we will begin with the Baltimore Ravens, who get a much needed win over the Dallas Cowboys, but not in as convincing fashion as you would like. Some questions very much still remain about this team, and quite frankly, that shouldn't have been that difficult. I believe it was 28-6 that they had the lead on at one point, and then they took their foot off the gas, which I get. Teams do all the time. And it is tough to flip that switch back on once you have flipped it off. But still, this should not have been as difficult as it was. This was a real problem for the Ravens that, like, once they had to wake up and make plays again, they just couldn't. It was very challenging for them to get a couple of first downs and string anything together, and it just let the Cowboys continue to get back into this game. And like I had said after their opener that it was a good performance and a win. And like they won, or they lost, but you feel pretty good about it. This one, they won. You feel kind of bad about it based off of how the back part of that closes. First part of the game, they dominated, and that probably should have continued. And I think when you look at this Ravens team and how this season has gone so far, I don't know if you need to be taking your foot off the gas pedal. I don't know what it is about this team and leads, but they blew a fourth quarter lead against the Raiders. I would assume that they would have learned a lesson and tried to not do that against the Dallas Cowboys. But there you go. It really just comes down to a failure to make the big plays when you need it. It bit them against Kansas City, although they almost did it. But it bit them against Kansas City. It definitely bit them against the Raiders, and it almost got them here against the Dallas Cowboys. On the Dallas side, they are in real trouble. When it was looking like a blowout, I was starting to wonder, like, is McCarthy getting fired? Because I view Mike McCarthy as the most overrated coach in the National Football League these days, and have for quite some time. And so I will admit that, like, the second there is any kind of a speed wobble out in Dallas, is, Coach gonna get fired? Coaching change? We gonna fire him? I will admit that I have an itchy trigger finger when it comes to that particular coach, and so yes, I do kind of look for it. But this would be back-to-back horrendous blowouts, and so at least the comeback saves that discussion for a week or so. But still, this is a big issue out in Dallas. And for this Cowboys team, what do they do well? What is okay, well, at least they do this thing. They have been absolutely beat up now in 2 games. And at least, look, they got a good field goal kicker. So I guess there's that. But they don't have a good coach. The offense isn't really moving the ball all that effectively after beating up on a down Cleveland Browns team in week 1. And defensively, they're not stopping a thing right now. And I get, like, different teams perform differently in different weeks, but I do think that it should be a little eye-opening to Dallas Cowboy fans how easy it was for New Orleans to kind of kick the shit out of your defense last week, and then this week, the problems that New Orleans had against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that there should be some thought there of, like, like, NFL math doesn't always add up, but that one seems concerning. And so I think the Cowboys really need to kind of open their eyes and see what is happening there. I do like that Dak is calling his teammates out, and I get the, if you want to get off thing. A lot of people are pointing that to fans or whatever. I kind of think that was a shot to people in the locker room. Like, look, if you guys, because there was a lot of fighting on the sidelines and a lot of bickering, and I kind of wonder if there were a lot of players who were a little upset at the whole Dak Prescott contract situation and how all that was playing out. And I just think that he is just like, look, I'm leader on this team, rightly or wrongly. I'm leader on this team. we are going in this direction. So follow along or get off now. I think that's what he was saying. And so I like that there is some accountability coming from him with that, or holding his teammates accountable. I thought he played fine. The Cowboys, unfortunately, kind of hinge on how he plays, and that's not a good thing for them. He is not that guy, I don't think. And now he's getting paid to be that guy. But I want to make it very clear that a late game comeback that involved an onside kick recovery cannot dictate your feelings on this team. We need to remember this is a bad football club going forward. The Philadelphia Eagles get a win that they needed in a huge way, beating the New Orleans Saints. And now you see Smith go down with an injury. So now it is Goddard and Barkley that step up. This is why you assemble these types of super teams, right? Like this is why you have when you are seeing like, okay, just because I like to pile on, you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. And when it gets down to playoff time, it's like, okay, well, Matthews got hurt. No, well, there's this. Oh, well, this guy didn't go well. It's like, this is why you accumulate high-level talent the way that these guys have. Because the thought isn't just, hey, you know what's awesome? Having a bunch of awesome players. Like, yes, obviously, that helps. But when injuries happen, to some of them, but when injuries happen, you now still have other high-level players that can step up. And so, yes, when this offense has Brown and Smith and Goddard and Barkley, everything works really, really well. But when a couple of them go down, it shouldn't just throw it all into chaos. It is now, okay, this is time for this guy to step up. Goddard, 3rd and 16, steps up in a big-time way. It is now time for Barkley to step up. He comes up with a couple of big runs that really helps seal this game away. This was really nice to see some of those other pieces stepping up for the Philadelphia Eagles. Hurts still wasn't amazing in this game, but they were able to get the job done. I thought this was a really bad game for Sirianni and the coaching staff. And like, if you want to get on them for the pass on 4th down on Monday Night Football last week, I guess maybe. Well, we kind of talked about it. Like, I didn't hate that as much as some other people did. I hated 4th and 1 with 12 seconds left in field goal range with no timeouts, and you run the ball. You are then assuming you're going to get like a 21-yard touchdown run on a run up the middle or whatever that play call was to help seal this game out. It ain't happening. That's not going to work. So I do think that there has been some real awful coaching decisions. And again, the Barkley one isn't it, but I do feel like Sirianni has kind of lost his fastball a little bit in the play calling department, and it is hurting this Eagles team actually quite a bit. But again, the defense stepped up. This was the best this defense has looked this season. There was a real speed, there was a real aggression to them, and they did a very good job, at least kind of bottling up this run game and putting some pressure on Derek Carr. And it kind of brings the Saints back down to earth a little bit. We said in the preview last week that the offense was, let's see what happens when this offense gets pushed. And they were pushed this week, and to their credit, like, they hung in this game, right? And they had chances to win, and they just didn't capitalize. But the offense did look slower, it looked significantly less explosive, and it looked a whole lot less comfortable for Derek Carr in this game. And so, yes, maybe the Saints are improved, and this new offensive philosophy where you can actually do play action and actually have some movement, all of this philosophy might be good, but it's still, this isn't as improved of a football team as we thought. The Eagles were doing a really good job of getting pressure on Derek Carr, and then basically everything felt 50-50. It forced Carr into a lot of throws and just panic and just throw it out there, and those, like, it's 50-50 at best. And now when you have Chris Olave, that helps. But he did not look comfortable. This offense didn't look comfortable all game. And I think this is a little bit more what we'll expect to see from the Saints going forward. But again, as we've been saying, even going back to the preseason, this defense is for real, and this defense is very much legit. Moving on to the Sunday Night Football game, the Kansas City Chiefs survive again. There just isn't a whole lot of analysis to do with this team, right? Like, they are a very good football team that make maybe a few too many mistakes and let teams kind of hang around. And that, like, it's been this way for 2 years. And so I have a difficult time overreacting to what we are seeing with now 3 one-possession wins in 3 games when, A, they're 3-0, B, they did this even worse. Like this is still better than it was last year when they won the whole thing again. So we've kind of just seen this whole story with this team before. So it's tough to just be like, okay, well now this is the time we actually have to panic because the rest of the AFC doesn't look as good. You have Baltimore, who is still figuring some things out. Miami, who's going to be on their third quarterback in 3 weeks when they play on Monday night probably against the Tennessee Titans. The Chargers in your division have taken a step back. Well, maybe not a significant one, but talent-wise, they've taken a step back, although they're a better team maybe than they were last year, but that's, beside the point. The Raiders, who finished second in the division last year, just lost to one of the worst teams football has ever seen. You just kind of bounce around the whole conference, and it still feels like it's Kansas City's to win. And so it's tough to really overreact to a whole lot of this. Also, while I maybe wasn't as high on Cincinnati and Atlanta as others, it's still like Baltimore, Cincinnati, Atlanta. Those are 3 pretty good teams that you just knocked off to pick up a win and get your season going in the first 3 weeks of the year. That ain't bad. And if we're giving grace to some of these other teams, well, oh yeah, no, it'll click as the season goes on. Oh yeah, no. But Kansas City, like I can't really overreact to it. It's the offense doesn't look as dynamic as maybe you would hope, especially after what we saw in week 1. Worthy isn't going to be able to bust off Tyreek Hill-esque plays every single week. Rashee Rice might. He looks amazing. But now with no Pacheco and basically a fullback in there running plays, it's not as explosive, it's not as dynamic, but they still come up with those big plays in winning times that get them the plays and the victories that they need. For the Falcons, I hated some of those play calls, 3rd and 4th down, the runs. Like, I get Bijan is your best guy. I think you have to get him involved in the pass game and just give yourself some other options. A run to the outside on 4th down, if the other team gets there and cuts it off, like you have nothing. And I get that that's literally every play where, oh yeah, if the other team defends it well, then you're screwed. Like, yes, that's how the sport works. And so maybe not the most in-depth analysis, but it just like on those particular ones, like even if it's something up the middle, maybe you can at least bounce into a cutback lane or something. When the defense outflanks you on the outside and you aren't able to turn that corner, there just isn't a whole lot of room. And now you're getting trapped because the sideline's there. You're kind of stuck. And so I don't love some of that play calling there. Overall, like, that they were in it for the most part. And what we said about how the Chiefs would defend kind of came true, where they were just content, like, yeah, just if you're going to beat us, it's going to be Mooney, or maybe a little bit in the run game. And the run game got going. But Drake London having a huge late drive to end up going over that receiving total was so annoying, because we had that one bagged the whole game, and then he just goes nuts on the last few drives to get over the top. But it was nice to hit that Mooney over by the second quarter. And so I don't know, like for the Falcons, I don't think that this is oh, well, they are screwed. I also don't think this is hey, look how well they hung with the champs. Back they come. This is just kind of all right, well, they played well. And it still has looked better than it did in week 1. So at least there's that. It might start to get really bad out in San Francisco. That was a really, really bad loss. And I get that they have a lot of injuries right now. That loss is unacceptable. You cannot get so soundly outcoached and outplayed in the second half and in the fourth quarter of a game the way that San Francisco did. And yes, it would help if you weren't throwing to Juwan Jennings and if it wasn't just Mason running it to try to put that game away. But those guys actually played all right. You cannot allow that sort of a loss to happen if you're San Francisco with, again, all the injuries you are dealing with, but San Francisco, or the Rams are also dealing with a lot of injuries, and I don't think you can allow for that type of a loss to happen in a division game when Seattle looks improved, Arizona looks really improved, and this is going to be a battle all season long. You have a chance to get a win over a division opponent, and you let it slip away in that fashion. That is a really, really difficult loss to take for the 49ers. And now this is 2 in a row, pretty bad losses for San Francisco. On the Rams side, I still don't know if there's anything actionable about this. I still see people listing them as one that could make the playoffs. With the injuries they have, I just don't see it. But this was coaching brilliance today by McVay, or sorry, yesterday by McVay. And it was still, it's Stafford not giving up. And it's Williams just being an absolute tank and just getting the absolute most out of every inch of talent that they had out on that football field to end up getting the job done. So that it is a good win, but I don't think it is an actionable one for the Rams. If anything for us, I think that this may lead to them being a little bit overpriced in some following matchups, and that might be something we can exploit going forward. The Vikings, I think we might have to start taking them seriously. I had said in the NFC win total preview that I liked the Vikings, I think, a little bit more than other people did. I just couldn't justify getting them. I think it was over 7.5. Like, I just don't see this being an 8-win team. And they look good. Like all the things that we were talking about from last year, where like this team actually like won quite a few games and had bad quarterback play. So even if Sam Darnold is just kind of average, they might actually move things a little bit. And they did that. Like this was a really good performance again from Sam Darnold, and he gets banged up, so we'll see what happens. But this has been the best he has looked at times in his career, and Aaron Jones is being used like a legitimate playmaker. This is a players not plays sort of a thing where they have kind of understood, look, we have Justin Jefferson, best wide receiver in the league. After that, we don't got a whole lot. So Aaron Jones is our second best player. Let's use him as if he is our second best player. They use him in the passing game. He's obviously been dynamic in the run. This is a legitimately, I think, good team. I don't know. Like, I'm not racing out for Vikings Super Bowl futures or anything like that. But offensively, this team's moving it. And defensively, this is back-to-back really strong performances from this defense. And again, I know the injury issues on San Francisco, but they kind of shut those guys down. And they just ate the lunch of the Houston Texans. And so Brian Flores, for all the shit he took for some of that stuff in Miami and all of that, holy hell, man, is this guy coaching the hell out of this defense right now. On the Texans side, I know, like we just said, hey, the Vikings are legit. Watch out for them. But also, these guys just lost to the Vikings. That's a little concerning. It is weird to talk out of both sides of your mouth that way, but I do think there is something to that, where like the Texans... The Texans have some issues here. Their offense has looked good exactly once, and that was against an Indianapolis Colts defense that, quite frankly, we have no respect for at all. And so, like Chicago, good defense, shut them down. Vikings, good defense, shut them down. But the Texans are in a different stratosphere now, right? They are in a different level where we are talking about them as a potential Super Bowl contender. And last time I checked, you are going to have to play some good teams if you're going to get to the Super Bowl. So you can't just be like, well, played a good defense, on to the next one. It's like, no. No, if you, like, it's fine if you're, I don't know, name a team, the Raiders. And it's like, okay, well, good defense, shut us down. On to next week, because their expectations aren't that high. But for the Texans, when you want to win the division, win playoff games, and get to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to face good defenses, and you're going to have to figure it out. And right now, this offense really isn't figuring it out. There is just something off with them. They can't run the ball at all. That, I think, might be a bit of an issue. And now, the run stats might be a little skewed, because down 34-7, you're not exactly worried about establishing the run. But I do think that it is putting them in some disadvantageous situations, and that is setting them back in some really big ways. So I do think that this is going to be something that gets fixed, but this is a problem. And another thing to watch out for is the defensive side of the football. When, like, they looked very good against Chicago, but that, like, it just became obvious what you needed to do against Chicago. Bring one extra rusher, and you're going to completely shut them down. They gave Anthony Richardson what right now looks like easily his best game of the season. And now in this game, they kind of got diced apart by Sam Darnold. That is not a who's who of quarterbacks right now, given what we've seen from Anthony Richardson the last 2 weeks. So I think there's real concern about what's happening on the defensive side of the ball with the Houston Texans as well. Back into the NFC, the Green Bay Packers, they're just good, man. Like, Matt LaFleur, this has been a masterclass in coaching the last couple of weeks, and kind of understanding the lack of variety that the Indianapolis Colts are going to throw at you. And I think also, then going into this one, and yes, they were given some great spots by the Tennessee Titans, but I do also think that there has to be a recognition of, like, that this team went out and executed a game plan almost perfectly. And the Titans did a better job of bottling up Josh Jacobs. They just didn't bottle up Malik Willis. There is so much talent on this team that they've been able to get a lot out of this kid and do a really, really good job. And so when Jordan Love comes back, you have to feel very confident about this team as a real legitimate threat in not just the NFC North, but in the NFC in general. And on the defensive side, like they just put themselves in positions to win. But this is back-to-back weeks where the defenses looked pretty good. We will get to maybe why they look good this week in a second when we talk about the Titans. But defensively, this team stepped up. And they stepped up last week against the Indianapolis Colts as well. That was kind of an under-discussed part of everything last week, was that the Colts' defensive game plan wasn't very good, and it allowed the Packers to kind of hang around and do their thing. But also, you had a Green Bay defense that held Indy to 10 points. And now they go out and they do it again against the Tennessee Titans. So I'm not going to say this is a good defensive football team yet, because we have some questions about the offenses that they have shut down. But I do think that this is a team that you do need to start taking seriously. And like I said, really, really seriously. I mean, look, I've been taking him seriously, and if you've been watching and kind of following along, they were my pick to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC this year. So that feels great right now, because I think that this is a legitimately very good team, and we'll see as the season goes on. They have a real interesting matchup with the Vikings coming up next week. The Tennessee Titans have a quarterback problem. It's not getting better. And I get it's only 3 weeks, and to just assume that he's going to go from what we saw in week 1 to now being Tom Brady in week 3. I know it doesn't work that way. And I know I'm being very impatient right now. But this was supposed to be okay, we have surrounded you with talent now go out and do it. We got you in the second round when a lot of people thought you were a first or second round talent. You are not looking like it so far. And you had at least a bit of a taste of the starter life last year. These things shouldn't be as overwhelming for you this year. And they are. The decision-making and the processing are significant issues. I get you have, again, a young quarterback, but it's so bad. It's just I don't know how else to put it. It is putting yourself in some really, really bad spots. And this is a good football team, I think. They have brought in some really good veteran players, and with even just average quarterback play, they are at least 2-1. And I don't know, maybe they still lose this game today, but I do Sunday. I don't know why I'm doing that. I didn't watch anything today. But maybe they still lose this game, but he is not giving them any chance in any of these things at all. And I get with these veteran, with a young quarterback, the thought is, well, let's let him figure it out. Let's let him see. Let's see what we have in him, and let's kind of go. But you do have some veteran players on this team. It's not like this is a young group that is just on the rise and they're all going to get better. You brought in quite a few veterans across the board to try to get everything fixed on this team, and it's not working, and it is becoming, I think, a real problem with the Titans. And at least the one thing you can say around Will Levis is you have surrounded him with enough things that you now know what he is, right? And I'm not saying after 3 games. I'm saying now after 17. When the season is done, you have at least, you can't say, with Sam Darnold with the Jets before, where I was yeah, I mean, it didn't go well, but the offensive line sucked and he had one good guy to pass to. Or what it would have been with Drake May this year, where it's yeah, he has 2 NFL players on the offense total. What are we doing here? You don't have that. With this team, you have an offensive line with 2 first-round picks on it that I think is doing pretty well. You have a run game that has been able to kind of get going in the first 3 weeks. You have Calvin Ridley, who, while inconsistent, is quite talented. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who, while injured, is still quite talented. You have enough pieces around him that if it continues to look this bad, you kind of know he ain't it. And it maybe seems a bit quick to just drop it. I do think that they are kind of in a spot that they don't have to pay him right away, I don't think. I can't imagine. This is only his second year, right? Yeah, we're still ways away from figuring out the we have to pay him conversation. So maybe you have a little bit more runway with it, but I do think if this season continues to go the way that it is going, and you are in a position to draft a good young quarterback next year, you just do that. And if there's one that wants to come in free agency or is available in trade, you go out and do that if this continues. If it doesn't, if it doesn't present itself, if you're drafting fourth and the 3 NFL kids go 1, 2, 3, all right, well, let's give it another go with the kid and move on because he's still quite inexpensive, and let's just try to make the best of it. But I don't think he's playing himself into we need to see a little bit more so far because he's actively costing them games with awful decisions. Week 1, it's the pick 6 that gets the Bears back in it and lets them win. Week 2, another interception, they lose a 1-score game. And in this one, more ball control issues and more tough situations that put your defense in some bad spots that allowed Green Bay to thrive. So overall, problems for the Titans is kind of what I'm getting at. Not so much out in Seattle. This breakdown won't be as much. They just kind of took care of business. Also, sorry. Hi, Deeds. Howdy. I saw you in the chat there, but was mid-rant, and so didn't want to stop. But hello, Deeds. Thank you. Thanks for popping in today. Really appreciate it. The Seattle Seahawks go out and take care of business. And that was one of those games that you watch it for 3 minutes. It's like, well, probably should have thought more of Seattle in this one. And I do think eventually that ended up being a pick that I clicked and a game that we do end up predicting right. But I wasn't as confident about it and wish I would have banged that one home a little bit more. Because it was just, as that game got going, it was so clear how one-sided this was going to be. Was a little scared at how difficult it was for Seattle to get by Denver and New England, but this was not that. The offense looked great. The defense looked fantastic. This was a real complete effort from a Seattle team that is now 3-0 and is looking like they are a real, I'm not going to put them in the Green Bay tier just yet of like actual legitimate contender, but they're a threat for the division, and I wouldn't want to go into Seattle in the wild card round or the divisional round at all. The Dolphins, meanwhile, they take more hits. Skylar Thompson goes down with an injury in his game. In this game, this could get real ugly out in Miami real quick. The thing that worries me the most, and I get we kind of all agree Skylar Thompson's a limited option at the quarterback spot now, and now you go past him. I think it's Tim Boyle who they brought in, also limited. This was supposed to be the good spot, right? Like not that it was against Seattle, because the Seahawks are actually quite good. And defensively, the Seahawks I think are really good. But this was supposed to be the extra prep time, right? Like you're coming off of the Thursday nighter, so you have 10 days to prepare for this team, and they just took you to the woodshed, man. Like they beat the holy hell out of them in this game, and so and also like they were coming off an overtime game last week. So while you were sitting at home being able to prepare, they were going an extra quarter against a New England team that maybe you shouldn't have to do that against. And it ended up being a real challenge for them. And so to have that extra rest edge, that extra time to game plan and try to figure out how to make life easier on your young quarterback, to come out with that is a little bit concerning. They do have now a little bit of extra time again going into Monday night against the Tennessee Titans, but I am not confident that they're going to be able to get that thing rolling. This looked concerningly bad today. Still some concerns out in Detroit. The Lions, they get a win, but they don't answer the questions we had from them. I like the Cardinals quite a bit this season. I think we've established this. That is not a defense that should be giving you those problems. And again, they still got the win, but there was a pick 6 that got called back for a stupid, the 2-minute warning hit, when it was very obviously 2:01 by the time the ball was snapped. I wish they paid that close attention to the play clock. And so for that to happen, I'm not going to say completely change the game, because there's still a whole second half after that. But it might have shifted how the dynamic of that game was going to go. And so that is a little concerning from a Detroit standpoint. And then the offense doesn't really get going until there's a trick play involved. And that's, I've said this a couple of times and a few times. It is nice to have trick plays. It's really bad to need trick plays. And they have now needed some trickery, some trickeration to get the offense going again. And that is concerning for me. Goff has not looked comfortable. And this was supposed to be the year. All these games are indoors, and you have now another weapon in Jameson Williams to go out and do these things with. It is another year with Jahmyr Gibbs figuring out how to be one of the more explosive players in the NFL. You have all of these different things going for you, and it's just not clicking. And so again, this was supposed to be the year. This was supposed to be the time that the Detroit Lions clicked, and it's not clicking right now. Goff like, again, this was not a defense to struggle against. And the defense you struggled against last week in Tampa Bay kind of got eaten up by Bo Nix this week. And again, NFL math doesn't work that way, but still, this game does not bring down any of the red flags I had for Detroit. And honestly, makes me feel pretty good about Carolina. Kyler Murray was kept in check by this defense, and they contained the run a little bit more than other teams have done in the past. But still, Kyler goes out. He gets Harrison a touchdown. Wilson gets a touchdown. The run game was still kind of effective. They just ultimately didn't come up with the big plays that they needed at the times to get those wins. But ultimately, this was supposed to be a team they lost to, and they did, but they hung around in it. This was one where Carolina bumps up, in my eyes, a little bit. Steelers against the Chargers, it kind of was what we thought it was going to be, not necessarily a masterpiece. It does really drive home this Steelers defense is legit and maybe the best in the NFL. Told y'all on the Patrick Queen thing, just saying. Not that there was a whole lot of pushback, but still. The offense, still not great, but 20 points against the Chargers, no one's done that so far. So I'm not saying, like, watch out, here come the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the offense is equal parts lacking talent and not being run well, and so there's that also. But no, this is a good team. For the Chargers, I don't know if there's a lot here. Like, defensively, they played kind of well. Giving up 20 points to Pittsburgh for the first time this year isn't awesome on the resume, but still, like, that's the toughest test they have faced, and I think for the most part passed. Like, they lost, but they passed. Herbert, the injury stuff continues to be a concern. And you do have to worry about this being an ongoing thing all year. Like, you kind of just, maybe 3 weeks rest won't help. But you kind of just want to be like, hey, can you just not for a couple of weeks and try to get this thing figured out? And we'll take our lumps. I mean, we're not winning because of great quarterback play anyway. So let's just take our lumps without you, and you try to get this figured out. Because I do think there's something there with this team. But it's not if Herbert's only going to play 3 quarters every week. The Bears have established now, it's not it. Not it this year. Williams at least showed a couple of signs of life this week, but this offense is going nowhere. Swift is not helping in the run game. We are now into 3 spots where, oh no, he's good. It's just not whatever. They're not using him right. It's not whatever. Well, they're using him in the ways we want him to be used, and it's not working. And this is now 3 teams where it isn't working. So maybe Swift just isn't all that good. The receivers are getting hurt all the time, so that's not great. The offensive line has issues that continue to be a real problem, and Williams has to run for his life an awful lot. And so while I do think Williams is going to be good, and I do think Roma Dunze is going to be good, I do not think it's going to be this year. And so the breakout for the Bears that I keep waiting for keeps not happening, and I'm now done waiting for it. I will say, this defense is for real. This defense is just ferocious, and it's going to keep them in a lot of games. But, like, again, the Colts do not mix things up on defense all that much, and for the Bears to have the issues that they had with it, it's concerning, at least I think, from a Chicago standpoint. For the Colts, they survive. This is back-to-back Quiet Richardson games, which is not great. I have him in 2 fantasy leagues, and it's not helping, that's for sure. And I don't see a lot of signs that it's going to get better. Again, this was a good Bears defense, so you don't want to overreact too much. But the only game that he did well in, he completed 9 passes, right? So unless those huge plays are going to be there, I don't think that he is ready to methodically move an offense down the field. Again, they still get the win, but there you go. And at least the defense held their own this week. I am going to refuse to let 2 low-scoring games from this defense fool me into thinking that this is a good defense. The Broncos get their first win of the year. The defense really came to play on Sunday. Nick started to use his legs a little bit more, which might be a bit of a game changer to kind of help at least sustain some drives for this offense and get the defense a little bit of rest. That whole complementary football thing, win the field position battle and whatnot. So maybe that helps a little bit. I am still not going to buy into this team at all, but good on them for getting the win. For the Bucs, this is a nice reminder that they are a good team, not a great team. I think, like, this offense was absolutely shut down by Denver. Nowhere to run. Now, they were down early, and teams tend to abandon the run when that happens. But nowhere to run early. Godwin makes a nice catch in the end zone, but they really did a good job of shutting down Evans in this game. I'll have to go back and watch a whole lot of it. mainly just red zoning the whole day. But I want to see like what were they doing on Evans that just completely took him out of this game. I have some thoughts, but I will wait to go back and actually watch that to see. But this whole game was just like a nice reminder that the Bucks were our biggest win last year and helped make it a winning year around these parts last season. But that doesn't make them a great football team. It just means we saw that the market was wildly underestimating them last year and jumped on it. And so now this year, they're 2-0, things are going good. All right, these are our guys again. It's like, wait, mid. They are still mid, and because of that, they will put up good performances like we saw against Detroit, but they are also very much capable of just absolutely shitting the bed. And so to just have them locked in, week out as a team to play is just not the way that we should be doing this. They are, I think we had maybe Denver a touch lower than we should have, although I don't think so, but we definitely had Tampa Bay a little bit higher than I should have in my mental power ratings of this whole thing. Giants-Browns was as bad as we thought it was going to be, but we've established, like, Malik Neighbors is a beast. I thought Rome Odunze was going to be the best, like, the second best receiver in this draft and better than Neighbors. And he still might be, but he has a long way to go because Neighbors just looks like an absolute beast. And an absolute world beater. The kid is just phenomenal. Meanwhile, the Browns, like, they're terrible. They scored on the opening possession after getting a fumble recovery just outside of the red zone off the opening kickoff, and then didn't score again against the Giants until the fourth quarter. Watson, terrible. We need to save Amari Cooper from him. Cooper makes an amazing catch down the sideline or was it for the touchdown? I think it was down the sideline. And like he is so talented. But this is and it is immeasurable how screwed up this franchise is. Moving on. Speaking of embarrassing franchises, the Carolina Panthers are on the board as they step up and beat the Raiders. Andy Dalton picked this Raiders team apart, and I said that I didn't think he was going to bring that much life into this team. I still said this is one of the least talented teams in the NFL, and yes, quarterback was an issue, but it's not the biggest issue. Oops. He came in and just ripped apart my favorite team in the Raiders. And I said on Let's Raid, the Vegas Raiders podcast that we do here, it ended up being Saturday morning, but leading up to kickoff anyway. You're going to be able to catch that right here on the Couch Potato Diary feed. For YouTube fans, the people watching on YouTube later, there's there is a playlist on the YouTube channel for just Raider stuff. And I said on there, like, that this is not a game you should lose. Like, this is to come off of that win last week against Baltimore. You're moving the football well. This is, I get it's Andy Dalton, but still, like, that is an immobile quarterback back there that Max Crosby should be able to just feast on. And he didn't, and potentially banged up, whatever. But this was a sound and thorough ass kicking. And on the Carolina side, it does, I don't want to overreact. Because the very obvious thing is, okay, well, Bryce Young was the problem. And I don't think that's the case. I think this team sucks. I really do. And I don't think Bryce Young is the problem. But I will say, that looked different. That looked energized. That looked fired up. It looked so much different for Carolina. And it felt like a team sending a message to Bryce and to ownership that, hey, maybe it's not us. Maybe it is him. And again, it's 1 week. I don't want to read too much into it. I am not there. But it is very easy to draw that comparison. On the Raiders side of things, I kind of, in my notes, I kind of went on a rant. I'm not going to go into this whole thing. I've basically now prepped half of Let's Raid at least. But every aspect of the game, the Raiders were dreadful in. How does that defense hold you to 218 yards passing before you make a change at quarterback? How does that offense put up 34 points when they had scored 13 in the previous two games? Even Carlson's missing field goals out there. And he was only 0 for 1 because they couldn't even move the ball into field goal range. This was an abysmal performance. And Pierce calling out the team, saying like, yeah, a lot of business decisions were being made. We'll make some business decisions too. I'm interested to see what that looks like. And now this is the test for him, right? They have the Browns next week, who, as previously stated, suck. But I do also admit Carolina sucks. And they just kicked the shit out of the Raiders. So now, this is where I think a real test of the Antonio Pierce thing kind of comes together. This is not a talented football team. And any suggestion otherwise is insane. Although I do like the talent of the pass catchers that they have. And again, like you have Crosby, you have Wilco. Like this isn't, the cupboards aren't bare like they are seemingly in Carolina right now. But this is not an overly talented football team. This is a team that wins with effort, quite frankly, and the effort was bad. So now that you have this and you have sent this message, how does the team respond? This is going to be a very telling week. And I don't think ratings for Browns Raiders is going to be super high this week. And again, I don't think Scott Hansen is going to be popping in much during the witching hour for this game. But I will say that this is going to tell you a lot about Antonio Pierce as a coach and these players in what they think of him. So while we don't want to read too much into one game on the Carolina side, I am going to be reading a whole lot into what happens out in Carolina, out against Cleveland next week.